Here we go. Hey, let's do it. Hey, giddy up on three. 1, 2, 3. Giddy up.
You can feel the buzz when you're around this city. People have fallen in love with the Birmingham Stallions. Here we go. We're getting a little juice going.
Birmingham is going to win the USFL championship.
Welcome back to another episode of State of the Stallions. I am joined this week by the one and only James Larsen, fresh off the field in Detroit, Michigan, with his Michigan Panthers gear on, with the audacity to wear that on this Stallion show. But I won't say more about that than that. I'll leave it at that for now. So,
This one's for you, Bomba Boy.
James, how's it going? Seems like I don't know how you have time to do this on top of all the other stuff you're doing, but I appreciate it. How's life on your end?
It's hectic, it's crazy, but CFL season, I wouldn't have it any other way.
Yeah, well, I full disclosure, I texted James about this kind of last minute. It was like 12:30 a.m. my time last night, and expected to hear back from him maybe this morning, but he texted me back last night, which was like 1:30 his time. So I was like, oh, I guess he's finishing an article or something.
Yeah,
But
I was
saw
up way
it the
too
next
late
morning when I
writing
woke up.
about Micah Baskerville at just time with DC.
There you go. There you go. James Larsen, a man of the people, no days off. Well, as much as I'm sure you would like to talk about the Panthers in your Panthers gear, we're going to save
please.
we're going to save that for another week because this is State of the Stallions, and that's who we're talking about. So, first of all, James, you and I were just talking about this before we got on here, but you recently went back and rewatched the game another time, and obviously Stallions come up with a I think you could say not the most dominant win they've ever had, but a pretty decisive victory over a struggling San Antonio team. So, first impressions on kind of the game and what maybe a couple of your takeaways from the Stallions kind of thumping of the Brahmas.
Yeah, I thought the key thing for the Stallions was that they were able to establish their run, and they did it early. And I think that is the key to success for this team, where you don't have like the dynamic passing attack that we've seen in years past, right? And obviously, not all of that is Birmingham's fault. They've been going through quarterbacks quicker than well, I'm not going to use example. I was just about to say, but they've been going through so
Keep
many
it PG
quarterbacks.
for the kids, James.
Yeah, exactly. Got to keep this family friendly show.
Yeah,
But anyways,
D Gray usually gets on here and drops a few F-bombs, so we gotta rein it back in. The kids out there are gonna be disappointed.
No, absolutely. I agree with you there, Luke. You're in seminary school right now. I can't be doing that on this show.
Exactly. I don't want to have to call your father, James, and let him know that you're out here using inappropriate analogies.
Please don't. Please don't. Yeah, that one of my main takeaways was that, Ricky Person got the ground game going early, and San Antonio, they really struggled up front. Now, the one thing that I will note about the offensive line for Birmingham, they've definitely improved over the last few weeks, and even with the injuries, right? Cole Schneider's been out, Keaton Sutherland's taken over at center. They've had some pieces move around, so it hasn't been smooth. Dave Guglielmo, or however you say his name, he's done a good job as the O-line coach. No surprise, he's one of the best coaches in this league. The pass blocking was a bit concerning. I thought Case Cookis and Andrew Peasley were both under pressure a lot, especially those second, third quarters where it looked like the Brahmas could get on a bit of a run. Cookis was under pressure. He was getting sacked. Like, the Brahmas pass rush was actually, for once, finally looking a little bit more effective than usual. So, that's something that Birmingham's going to have to clean up, especially coming up against a Houston D-line that's even better. I mean, their edge rushers are honestly some of the best edge rushers in the UFL. But another big factor for Birmingham, they controlled field position. You look at where San Antonio started with the ball, they were backed up on almost every single drive, and the Stallions, on the other hand, Davion Davis had a couple of big punt returns to set them up nicely, or San Antonio was just punting out of their own end zone. So even when the offense was kind of stalling out in that third quarter period, they still got field goals. They still extended the lead. So those were a couple of key things that I thought Birmingham did well this game, had to go their way, and hopefully can build upon moving forward.
Yeah, no, I think that's all fair. You kind of brought this up, but we might as well just go ahead and address the elephant in the room at the jump here. But the quarterback situation for Birmingham, not only in this game against San Antonio, but obviously all season, has been very not ideal, I think is how Skip put it at one point. They've
And that's putting it
now.
lightly.
Yeah, exactly. That's a understatement for sure. The Stallions have played 6 football games this season. They have played 4 different quarterbacks. They've signed 6 different quarterbacks to the roster. And depending on what happens this weekend, you could see another new quarterback, whether maybe Jalen Morton takes the field for a couple series or Jamar Smith takes the field for a couple series. I haven't heard yet what exactly Coach Holtz is planning, on doing as far as the quarterback position this weekend, other than I'm sure Cookus will be the starter, but it's possible we could see one of those guys get some reps just in case he feels like he needs to get them ready for down the road. So anyway, all that to say, by the time next week rolls around, we might have seen a 5th quarterback in just 7 games, which is kind of mind-boggling that you would have that much turnover at such an important position. And obviously, the injury bug struck again this weekend, where you had Case Cookus get a little banged up himself, but in the meantime, Andrew Peasley was getting some reps and looked pretty good, I thought, in the kind of opportunity that he had. And then you potentially lose him for the season. I mean, I haven't heard a final kind of diagnosis on what exactly happened, but it's serious enough that they had to go out and sign Jalen Morton, which makes me think he's probably at least going on IR, or at least at a minimum, he's going to be out a few weeks, and probably longer. So.
Yeah,
Anyway,
you heard Peasley on the broadcast kind of saying like it's my MCL.
yeah,
So seeing that and kind of knowing what that entails for especially for a quarterback, like odds are he's gonna be out for at least a few weeks. And it's also one of those situations where, best case scenario, the Stallions are in the championship, that's 6 weeks away.
yeah,
Like the odds of him being able to come back and actually be healthy is very, very low with an injury to your MCL. So like you
yeah.
said, Peasley's probably done for the year, and it's really unfortunate because I thought he looked really good. And look, he had some rookie mistakes. Okay, that sack that he took, the fumble that gave San Antonio some momentum in that second quarter, that was 100% on him. He should have thrown that ball right away. They literally were setting up a screen to the left. He doesn't recognize that somehow. I'm not sure kind of what happened there, but look, it's a rookie mistake. He's a young quarterback. He's trying to get his footing in the pro scene, and I thought Skip did a good job kind of coaching him up on the sidelines, not being too aggressive on him, but like being like, look, you got to throw that ball quick in that situation. And he came right back out. He fired. I mean, that deep ball to Deion Kane down the sidelines was a beautiful back shoulder throw. I mean, those are the types of things that, he flashes that sort of potential. And who knows what, next year, Matt Corral's injured, right? No guarantee that he comes back, depending, I mean, he was kind of talking about possibly hanging it up before this season. So if he's injured again, no guarantee Corral returns next year. Alex Magoo, who knows exactly what's happening there. Case Cookus might be up in the air depending on how banged up he is at the end of the season. Peasley's a young guy that definitely flashed potential, and hopefully we get to see more of him next year.
Yeah, I just as an aside, I mean, kind of on the Peasley thing here. I mean, I was really impressed with what I saw out of him. I think most of his errors, kind of as you were alluding to, were not necessarily, I think, errors that were. It wasn't like he made a terrible decision or he made a terrible throw or something like that. I mean, I think most of his errors were just from a lack of experience in this offense. Like there was one play where he called the play and then he had to like double check with Cade Johnson that he was like the guy that was running the screen. And that just goes to show you it's like he's only been in Birmingham for I think they signed him after week 2 when Alex got hurt. So like this was week 6. So he's been there for basically like 3-4 weeks, if that. So he's still learning the offense. He's still learning the plays. I think a couple of his mistakes were more just a result of him, not really fully having the playbook like internalized yet. But he's athletic. He got that first down with his legs. We saw at one point, so you kind of got a flash of that. I mean, like you said, that back shoulder throw he had to Deion Kane was probably one of, if not maybe even the best throw I've seen a Stallions quarterback make this season. Corral's had a couple good balls down the field, but in terms of like the precision and ball placement that he had on that throw, I mean, I thought very
I
impressive.
would I would argue that one's up there, along with Corral's throw to Jordan Thomas against Arlington when he fitted into a window when he was
Yeah,
streaking across the middle deep. I'd say those are precision when it comes to precision. Yeah, those two
yeah.
are probably.
I think for sure Corral's definitely had some throws that would be up there, but I think it says a lot about Peasley that like, despite his lack of experience in the offense and knowledge of the offense, for him to be able to come in and make a throw like that. And, like you said, yeah, I mean, I think the rest of this year is probably not going to see him again because even if he does get healthy by week 10, 11, 12, well, at that point, either Alex or Matt will hopefully probably either one or both of them will be healthy too. And Case will have a lot more experience under his belt by then, and so I doubt that he sees the field again this year. But I do think, as you were mentioning, it's hard for me to imagine that he's going to have a ton of NFL opportunities this next year, just because he wasn't a super highly touted prospect coming out of college, and he barely got any chance to show what he can do in the UFL. And even though he did look good in the little opportunity he had, I'm just not sure NFL teams are going to be jumping at that. And so I think there's a good chance he could be back next year, and I could see him being a guy that could really thrive in Birmingham, because I mean I've been saying this since we signed him. He really kind of fits the mold of a Skip Holtz quarterback, and kind of fits the offense really perfectly in terms of his skill set. I really liked how fast his release was. I mean, he gets the ball out really quick, similar to how Corral does, but he's kind of got all the things that you would want in a quarterback in Skip's offense. So I hate that this happened. I hate that he got hurt. Obviously, it's a part of the game. It's sort of become, a refrain at this point of like, oh, well, this guy got hurt, this guy got hurt, this guy got hurt, especially with the quarterback room. But
It's just Stallions skirts this year. It's insane. But
yeah,
to your point, I think makes Peasley stand out a bit is not only does he use his legs to like extend plays, but there's so many quarterbacks in this league where they use their legs and then that's all they do. And their eyes
mhm.
aren't looking downfield. They're not trying to still throw the ball, and they miss guys that are open. Because like when you extend plays with your legs and you're scrambling, you're rolling down the pocket, half the time the defenders start stepping up because they think that you're going to take off and run, and then all of a sudden your receivers are left open. So, a guy like Andrew, we saw that a couple times. There was one really nice play where he rolled out to the left, fired a dart for a completion. I can't remember which receiver it was to, but like those sorts of plays is kind of what really makes you stand out, especially in this scene. Like, I look at a team like Memphis, where the guys like EJ Perry and Troy Williams are both mobile quarterbacks, but both of them, they keep their heads down. Like when they escape the pocket, it's like, all right, we're not passing the ball. Like we're just going to go take off. And does that lead to success? Yes, but it limits your success when you're not keeping your eyes down the field, and that's a trait that I've saw in Andrew early. And again, hopefully we get to see more of it next year.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I mean, he started the game 4 for 4. And I mean, again, in this Stallions offense, the way they've been operating, in years past, that would maybe not be as impressive. But based on how the offensive played this year, I mean, that's the best, kind of a initial just sort of efficiency that we've seen from a Stallions quarterback. And the offense seemed to be moving the ball really well down the field with him at the helm. So again, I hate it that we lost him so quickly. We got to see such a small snippet of what he could do. But again, I think what we saw was very promising, and I could certainly see him being, coming back next year and competing to be the guy heading into 2026, like you said, depending on what happens with a few other guys. But, before we get ahead of ourselves here and start talking about 2026, as far as the rest of this year, the Stallions are in an interesting spot because you've got Case Cookus, who has now started a couple games, a little bit banged up, but should still be good to go moving forward. Obviously experienced in this league, but every year going back to 2022, he's had less and less success. I feel like he kind of peaked in spring football in 2022, was good but not as good in 2023, and then really struggled in 2024. Obviously, a lot of that had to do with the teams that he was on and the pieces around him. But there's still, I think, questions about how good is he or how dominant can he be in spring football. Has the league sort of caught up to him or passed him at this point? And then now you have two backups that are behind him in Jamar Smith and Jalen Morton, who both have, Jamar obviously a ton of experience in this offense, but hasn't played football like in a game since the first half of 2023. And then you have Jalen Morton, who spent a whole year in this offense, but took like 2 snaps, or 3 snaps in 2023, and has been playing arena football. And so, those are the other guys that you have out there. And then you have, hypothetically, if all goes according to a plan, potentially Alex Mgoo coming back, not this weekend, but the weekend after that. So, and then potentially Corral coming back in the postseason. So, all that to say, I mean, kind of projecting out, maybe to this upcoming game, but even maybe beyond that a little bit. I mean, what do you think the Stallions, will and or should do to try and get some stability at this quarterback position and finish the year out? Because, in a couple of weeks, we're going to be nearing the end of the regular season, and the Stallions very well could be gearing up for a playoff, kind of postseason run. And there's still no real consistency on the offensive side of the ball. And so I feel like you got to kind of figure out what the plan is, sooner than later. Do you just roll with Cookus at this point? Do you hope that Alex comes back and returns to his old form after he struggled in week 1? Do you give a guy like Jamar or Jalen Morton a shot? I mean, what do you think the Stallions do at quarterback moving forward?
It's such a strange situation like you laid out. I mean, there's so many variables, and what they should do, keep their quarterbacks healthy. Unfortunately, they don't really have control over whether or not they stay healthy. In Case, I mean, he was also hurt this past weekend where we saw him on the broadcast talking about his knee and how, it felt like there was a balloon in there or something along those lines. So it's like, what in the heck is going on with those protective stadium quarterbacks? Um, I think, as it stands right now, you got to keep Case in. I mean, he's got the most experience. He has flashed a lot of potential. I think he's growing in Skip Holtz's offense. He has been perfect. Look, his deep ball has been a struggle. Like he has not been accurate. There's a couple of shots he took to Deion Kane, Marlon Williams last week where he just overthrew him, missed him in stride. But again, those things are reps, right? It takes reps, then it takes practice. Like Case Cookers was QB3 up until week 4, so like it's still gonna take some time. It's gonna take, like really, what I really hope to see is that Cookers can just stay healthy and stay mobile because he's not the most mobile quarterback around. But if he loses his ability to run, that's been the one thing that's kept the Stallions offense kind of on track these last couple of weeks where Cookers has been able to take off. We saw it against Memphis where on 3rd and 28 he can take off for a 26-yard gain or he's had the ability to show what he can do with his legs. Alex McGough, if he comes back, how is he going to look? I mean, looking back at week 1, I mean, he looked like a quarterback that hadn't played the quarterback in a while, and he had an injury to his throwing shoulder, I believe. So how does that, how does he come back? How does he fit into the picture? Like, will he be healthy? I think the unfortunate thing is, if you throw him in week 8, week 9, he's gonna be playing against some really good football teams. I mean, can you throw Magoo in his first game against the St. Louis defense, which is statistically one of the best defenses in this league? I don't know if you can do that. I mean, it's gonna be tough. Um, I think right now the safe bet is to stick with. I mean, at least you're gonna have Cookus this week. Let's see how he does. I think that's a conversation that we kind of revisit in a week or two, kind of depending on how Case continues to grow in this offense. Jamar and Jalen, I love both those guys, but like you said, Smith hasn't played in the game since week 1 of the 2023 USFL season, and he's a quarterback that's had success. But this is the UFL now, and the defenses are way better than they were 2 3 years ago in the USFL. Same goes for Jalen Morton. He's got plenty of talent. He's been playing in arena football, and those defenses, the pace of the game, the way the game works, it's not the same. You're not playing against as many NFL caliber defensive players as you are, and the coaching as well is obviously far superior in the UFL as it is compared to some of these other leagues. So, safe bet, stick with Cookus, ride it out. Let's see what he does. I mean, I wouldn't be shocked this week though if Cookus is struggling. We might see some Jamar Smith minutes. I would not be entirely shocked if that happened.
Um, I've got a lot of questions. I'll just kind of fire them at you here, and you can take them where you want. But
All right.
on this quarterback situation, because obviously I think that's the big question with the Stallions right now. So my first question is, do you think the Stallions could four-peat with Case Cookus under center?
That is a really tough question to answer because I think if Case is healthy and if he has enough time in Skip Holtz's system, I think that they are capable, and it's more so. I think the Stallions' defense is more than capable of winning a game, and if our offensive line can at least block properly, then Case is a championship quarterback. He brought the Philadelphia Stars to the championship in 2022. Look, he hasn't been perfect by any means this year, or I mean, last year with Memphis was kind of a rough go for him as well. But the Stallions team has a lot of talent. Anybody can beat anybody at any given week. I think that if you have a healthy Alex McGough in there, he gives him a better shot, especially with how Michigan has been playing. I don't know if Case Cookers is going to be enough for them to get over that hump, but we'll see.
Okay, well, based on that, if you're Skip Holtz, and let's assume that Case this weekend against Houston plays about the same as he has the last couple of weeks. Not a major improvement, not a major struggle either. Like it's about the same quality of play, same level of production. And let's say Alex comes back and is available to play in week 8 against St. Louis in St. Louis. Do you start Alex and throw him back out there, or would you go ahead and stick with Case for the time being?
I would stick with Case and see how he does and give the opportunity for Alex to get into the game. I don't think you throw Alex right into the fire. I also, again, it depends on how severe his injury was, but like, is he going to be fully prepared and ready to start in the game and take hits to that throwing shoulder? We'll see. I mean, St. Louis is a hostile environment to play in, but at the same time, I really like Birmingham's odds against that St. Louis offense. I think the Stallions defense matches up really well. I think that pass rush would really give Max Duggan nightmares. So that, depending on how the defensive plays, it's really how does this game play out? I think you start Case, and if you're able to contain St. Louis, then get Alex in there and give him a few drives. Let's see how he does and see if he's ready for Week 9.
Yeah, I mean, the reason I ask is because in my mind, I think you have with Magoo, again, assuming he's healthy and able to play, you have a higher ceiling but a lower floor. Because in some ways you just don't know where Magoo's at right now, right? Like he had a good camp, is my understanding, and he looked good in camp, but then he really struggled in week 1 against DC, held on to the ball too long, took too many sacks, couldn't get into a rhythm.
He's
You
playing
know,
hero ball, like,
yeah. And
and
I think he could learn from that experience and have improved over the course of the season and gotten back to his form in 2023, but he got hurt. So he's been rehabbing the last 6 weeks, right? Like 5 weeks. So is he going to come back out and kind of have that same mentality and that same play style? And or because he hasn't really had the opportunity to kind of grow and learn and improve from his performance in week 1. You just don't know. I mean, that's the reason I say with Alex, there's a higher ceiling and a lower floor. Is like you just don't really know where he's at right now in terms of what you're going to get out of him. Because I don't think you can base everything off of week 1, right? But you had a poor performance in week 1. He's coming off of an injury. He had, again, part of probably what played into that poor performance in week 1 is he hasn't played quarterback much for a couple of years. So I think that with Alex at the helm, you have the potential for the offense to eventually hit a stride much better than what they're doing with Cookus. But you also have the potential that he goes out there, he's rusty, he's still a little banged up. He tries to sort of put everything on his own shoulders and ends up forcing things and making mistakes, and it ends up ultimately taking the offense a step back, which is part of the reason that I asked you the first question I did about whether or not you think Case can get the job done in terms of winning the championship. Because I think if you think that Case can do it, like if you're Skip Holtz and you feel pretty confident that, I mean, obviously at the end of the day with this current iteration of the Stallions, the 2025 Birmingham Stallions, if they win the championship, it's going to be because of the defense, right?
no
Like that's
doubt.
very obvious at this point. So the question is, do you have a quarterback that can go out there that can protect the football, not put the team in bad situations, put the defense in bad situations, and score enough points? It doesn't have to necessarily be 30, 40, 50 points, but at least score, 2, 3 touchdowns. And if you can score 20 points, right now, the way the Stallions defense is playing, if you can score, honestly, 2 touchdowns, you have a decent shot at winning the game. Like they're giving up, like I think the Stallions defense now is giving up like 12, 13 points a game or something like that. It might be less now because after this past weekend, it went down even further, I think. But so if you got a guy that can get you a couple touchdowns and the defense plays the way that it has been, you can win the championship. The question is Case that guy? Because I think if you are Skip Holtz and you go into week 8 and you're like, man, I'm not sure if Case can hold up against the best teams in this league and get the job done, then I think potentially you throw Alex out there just because you don't have a choice. I mean, part of the problem is time is not on the Stallion side, right? Like we're talking about week 8 of a 10-week season and you're trying to figure out who your quarterback is. Like that's a
And
bad
that's where the
spot to
concern
be in.
comes in of like, can this team actually win a championship when you have those questions like being asked? And I'm a huge Alex Magoo fan. Like I think he's tremendous in what he can do. But we saw week 1, like you said, look, week 1 was really bad. And how does he? The problem is he didn't have a chance to bounce back from that because he got hurt the first play against Michigan in week 2. That's the biggest issue. Is it's such a question mark, right? It's not like we got to see him play against Michigan and make some better decisions and be like, okay, this is looking more like the Alex that we knew in the USFL in 2023, right? We don't know. It's a complete question mark, complete anomaly. And instead of him having the time to, play a couple weeks and get his feet back under him and figure things out, he's had to sit out the last 7 games or 6 games, excuse me, because he's been injured. So I don't know if you can fully trust Magoo to come in and perform at, like, he's not going to perform at the USFL MVP level that he did 2 years ago. It's just the defenses are better. The landscape is different in the UFL now. If he can come in and at least play competent football, I say give Magoo the reins, but there's no guarantee because there's nothing like game reps, and until he actually gets those, I don't know if he's going to be making any improvements. And the problem is, if you're not giving him game reps until week 8, week 9, week 10, you could potentially be putting your playoff hopes in jeopardy with Houston right on your tail.
Yeah, and obviously this game this weekend will have a long way to go in that. But I mean, I think in some ways maybe if you're Skip heading into the postseason, what's probably going to happen is you're going to probably have three guys who all have about equal experience, right? Like potentially, let's hypothetically say that Alex does play, maybe week 9, week 10, something like that. Okay. Well, then you've got Magoo, who's maybe played in or started like 2 or 3 games. At that point, you're going to have Cookus, who's probably played in or started also, 3 or 4 games. And then you're going to have Corral, who played in and or started about 3 games. So you're basically looking at, you have 3 quarterbacks that each played about a third of the regular season. So part of me also just wonders if you just kind of go into the playoffs and you don't necessarily give these quarterbacks like a super short leash, but you kind of just play the hot hand and like maybe you start Cookus just because he's maybe potentially at the time the healthiest and most, at least recently the most experienced out of these 3. But you basically just kind of think to yourself, like, if the offense struggles, if we go a couple series and get some 3 and outs or aren't getting anything going, then I'll throw Magoo in there and see what he can do. Or hypothetically, if Corral is healthy by the playoffs, which he could be, then you say, all right, well, it's kind of almost what happened in a way in the playoffs last year where Martinez was really, really struggling. And then just to kind of give a spark to the offense, put Corral out there and he came in and, went 9 of 10, 9 of 11, and they ended up winning the game. So I don't know. In some ways, I think you might almost have in Birmingham by the time the season ends or by the time you get to the postseason, a sort of like quarterback by committee kind of thing where it's just kind of like you've got a couple guys. No one guy has really had the chance to cement himself as QB1 because of the injuries and because of the other things that have gone on. And you might just have to kind of put the guy out there that you think gives you the best shot to win. But also, like, if things aren't going well, I would pretty quickly be willing to maybe throw somebody else out there and just see what happens, But again, I mean, that's it's going to be on Skip to figure that all out. I mean, I do think if the Stallions make a run and if they do four-peat, then Skip's going to deserve an insane amount of credit if he finds a way to sort of keep this team on track and make things work despite all the challenges they've faced so far this year.
No doubt. And like you look at, the casual will be like, oh, the Stallions have the best odds to win it coming into the season. They're not the underdogs. But like right now, Birmingham is an underdog in a sense. I mean, you're down to your 3rd quarterback. You have lost 3 quarterbacks because the QB2 that you thought might become QB1 is now done for the season as well. So it's like the amount of injuries that they've had, the adversity that they've been through, to be 4-2 and be in the position that they're in is an incredible feat in and of itself. Let's see how the season finishes out. It's going to be tough. I mean, you're playing Michigan, you're playing St. Louis, you're playing a Houston team that's been playing good ball. So, and Memphis is no slouch. You literally lost to Memphis last week. So, every game is important down the stretch of the season. And, if the Stallions can somehow manage to get a 4P out of this, I mean, that'll be, this would be by far their most impressive championship of their spring career.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, well, we've probably talked about the quarterback stuff enough, but just one more thing on the quarterback thing I want to get your thoughts on before we move on to something else and then kind of wrap up here is this weekend against Houston. Obviously, I think Case is going to be the primary guy, right? He's going to start. He's going to play potentially in the entirety of the game, if not definitely the majority of it. Here's my question for you though: who do you think is QB2, Jamar Smith or Jalen Morton, and why? And
this week it has to be Jamar.
Okay, we'll come back to that in a second. Assuming it is Jamar, then I'll just concede that for a second. Do you think that we see him play some, kind of like what we saw with Peasley this past week? Not like, oh, things aren't going well, let's put out Jamar in there, but like it goes into the game with the plan to let Jamar or whoever QB2 is have a couple series.
For the first part of the question, I think Jamar's QB2 because he's been there a couple of weeks. He's had more experience playing with the Stallion system. Obviously, he's had a lot more experience with Skip Holtz. Jalen Morton has a little bit more recent playing experience in the arena scene, but he's got to come back and get reacclimated. He just came in this week. I just that doesn't seem like a Skip Holtz move to put a guy like Jalen Morton with, who's younger, has less experience, and especially hasn't been in the UFL for a couple of years. You don't want to throw him into the fire right away like that. Jamar, I think, is the safer option to kind of have as a safety blanket if Case gets injured or something like that. I don't see them doing a 2 QB system this week with Smith because, again, like Smith hasn't been there that long either. And Case needs reps. Like, that's the thing that's going to help him get over the hump now, especially knowing that Andrew Peasley's done and you can't play him anymore, well, okay, Cookus is going to be our guy. We got to give him the reps. We got to let him take over, at least for the time being. I don't think it makes sense to give Smith reps unless either A, Cookus is playing really bad and you just feel like you need a spark, so you got to put Jamar in there, or B, you're up by 3 touchdowns and okay, let's not risk Case getting hurt. Let's put Jamar in there in the fourth quarter. Like that's how I see Smith getting into this game. I don't think it'd be very smart to do a 2 QB system at this moment. I think you got to let Cook ride with Case Cookus, let him continue to get reps and be comfortable in this offense.
Um, okay, so here's my alternative proposal. I'm not saying that I think we will, but I think Skip should consider letting Morton be QB2 for a couple of reasons. Number one, yes, Jamar's been on the sideline the last couple of weeks, but he hasn't been practicing with the team. This is the first week he's been practicing with the team in Arlington. Same with Morton. So in terms of like their practice reps, they're pretty much in the same spot. Also, I think that Morton has been playing more football recently than Jamar. Now, you're right, it has been the arena game, not the outdoor game, but he's at least been getting like live action football reps that, again, Jamar hasn't really had since like first half of the first game of 2023. And then thirdly, the other reason I think Skip should maybe roll Morton out there is similar to Peasley, just to see what you've got. I mean, to some extent, you kind of know what you got in Jamar. He played an entire season in 2022. Skip knows him very well. He played for him in college. It's like, I don't know. I just feel like you kind of know what you're getting in Jamar to some extent. I feel like with Morton, though, it's kind of similar to what I was saying about Magoo earlier. Like right now, you just really don't know because you really never seen him play. Like he's only taken a couple snaps in a game in 2023, and that was it. Now we've seen what he can do at the arena level. Like he was playing very well in the arena level. He was probably one of 2 top candidates for MVP in the AF1. He's making a lot of plays with his arm and his legs, but obviously, as you said, it's a different level of competition. It's a different style of football, different coaches, teammates, all those sorts of things. So I would definitely not, like start Morton or something like that this weekend. But if I was Skip, I would consider having, a small package of plays and, maybe for at least a couple series going in with the plan of saying, like, let's see what Jaylee can do. You'd have to, I think, try and keep things very simple, maybe let him see if he can create some things with his legs, give him some, high, completion percentage type of pass opportunities. But just to see what you've got. And part of the reason I say that is because I just don't think Cookus is very durable. I mean, he's been banged up like the last several weeks, and I think he's just one play from going down. And again, you really don't know what you have in Magoo, so it's not like you have this surefire plan in week 8. I mean, at some point, it's like you got to roll with what you got. And so, that might be the argument of just playing Cookus the whole game and just praying he's healthy. But at some point, too, it's like, man, like you're still like one play away potentially from having to have one of these guys, Jamar or Morton, go in. And like I said, I just feel like you don't really know what you got with Morton, and potentially you've got something there that you might want to see. So I don't know. I mean, again, it would be safer to do that if they got like a couple touchdown lead or something and gave him that chance. But I don't know. I could see it potentially being something worth considering. But obviously, Case is going to be the guy.
I don't disagree. I think you could potentially run with something like that. The thing is I don't see Skip doing that because we've seen him typically pick the safer option, pick the guy that he's more comfortable with. That's why I think we see Jamar as QB2. But time will tell. That depth chart should be here in a couple days, so
yeah. And I
see.
will say the one thing that's interesting is I was told this secondhand, so take this with a grain of salt. But I was told that apparently Skip had reached out to Jalen Morton in the past about like times when the Stallions needed a quarterback, but it would have been in a situation where he would have clearly been QB3 and would have been sort of buried on the depth chart and been inactive every week. And Jalen was like, really wanting an opportunity to actually play and like show what he could do. And so he just like basically turned that down or didn't really express a lot of interest in that. And so the Stallions went a different direction and signed other people. But in this situation, it's a situation where, again, I wasn't even told secondhand that he was guaranteed, QB2. And it might have just been a situation where it was like, hey, all three quarterbacks are going to be active now because of the changing, CBA and stuff like that. So even if you're QB3, you'll still be active on game day, like the pay will be better, blah, blah. Like it could have just been that. But I could also very well see Skip picking up the phone and saying, hey, man, like I've got one quarterback who's played right now. It's Case Cookus. And then Jamar's coming out to Texas for the first, he hasn't been here. He's coming out for the first time on Monday. Do you want to come down to Texas too for the first time on Monday? And then you two can battle it out for core QB2 and go from there. And Jalen might have seen that as like a real worthwhile opportunity to leave the arena game and leave what he was doing because he has a chance to potentially come in and at least for a week or two, potentially, possibly even work his way as to the second quarterback in the depth chart. Again, who knows? We'll see when that comes out, how it sort of lines up. But yeah, this wasn't meant to be just an episode about the quarterback situation, but that's what it's turned into, unsurprisingly, because again, that is sort of the big question right now in Birmingham. But before we kind of wrap up and I'll let you go here, James, maybe just real quick, give me your thoughts on this game Sunday. I mean, this is really a huge game for both these teams because if Birmingham loses, then Houston and them are tied at 4-3 in the conference, and they both have a win over each other. So that wouldn't, there wouldn't be a head-to-head tiebreaker. It'd have to go to conference record and all those kinds of things. And so if Birmingham wins, though, then they put themselves 2 games ahead of Houston. And Houston's not out of it, but they're going to have to catch Birmingham or Michigan at that point. So, I mean, this is sort of it's not obviously a win and you're in kind of type of situation, but it's for either team, win and your odds go up a lot, lose and your odds go down a lot. And you're running out of time to kind of make up, lost ground. So, what's maybe some things you're watching for in this game? And you can go ahead and maybe after you tell us that, give us your kind of initial prediction as well.
Yeah, I mean, you look back at week 4, and these teams played a very competitive game. That was where Jalen McClendon made his debut, and not on purpose, but Nolan Henderson goes down. McClendon comes in, and he looks really good. Now you have a little bit more film, a little more tape on McClendon. And I think that'll help Birmingham's defense out to kind of, I think they were a little bit shell-shocked in that game because they never saw him before, and then he comes out and he's zipping the ball with high velocity. You're like, holy crap, this guy can wing it. I think you're in a situation now where Birmingham's defense, their secondary, and I tweeted about this a little earlier today. Their secondary has been a kind of a sore spot for them. This defense has been great, but you look at Madre Harper, Fayon Hicks. Some of these guys have really struggled. Rashad Wildgoose, because they're primarily, the reason they're on this team is because they're supposed to be more of the rotational pieces or the depth pieces, but because of all the injuries to guys like Kenny Robinson and Mario Goodrich, who's been out since week 1 or week 2, these guys have had to step in. And Madre Harper, I love him, but he had a really poor game. I mean, Justin Smith had a couple of receptions for over 100 yards against him this past week. So I think, hopefully, and from the looks of it, based on the injury reports, it looks like Robinson is fully practicing. Same goes for Goodridge. Daniel Isom's also looking healthy. So those are going to be some keys for Birmingham this week. Is if their secondary is at least healthier, that's huge because Houston's got a phenomenal wide receiver core. I mean, you look at the guys like Emmanuel Butler and TJ Vasher that are downfield threats. Justin Hall in the slot underneath. Kiki Chisholm can catch basically any contested ball that's thrown his way. So, and Marcus Sims might be injured, but either way, I mean, he's another downfield threat that can really. We know Marcus Sims. I mean, he's burned you guys before with Michigan. He's burned you with Houston. I mean, he's a threat as well. So it's really tough to say how this game will go. I think it's a matter of 1, who stays healthy, and 2, who can actually get off to a consistent start offensively. Because these are 2 teams that over the last few weeks have really flashed some serious potential, but then also on other drives we're like, what in the heck is this? So
Yeah.
both teams are seeing defensive backs come back after missing a couple weeks, so that'll be really helpful. I like what Case Cook is. I mean, Cookus, we didn't see him much in that game against Houston, but I mean, he did come in cold and have some success. I mean, that deep ball to Davion Davis on 3rd down was huge. So we'll see. I'm not. Do you ask me another question on top of that, or was it just kind of my thoughts on?
Your thoughts and then your prediction.
Yeah, prediction's tough. I mean, Birmingham's at home, so that helps out a lot, and I think that gives them an advantage because they're a really tough team to beat at home. I mean, the fan base there is great, and the Stallions, they don't lose their protective stadium. I feel like the Stallions are the slight favorite in this one, just given one, the fact that I think they're all going to rally behind Case and really just try to play a good game, and 2, Houston's missing Kirk Merritt again, and that's a really tough blow for the backfield. So Quandre White has been playing a really good ball, but White over the past couple of weeks has been even better because Kirk Merritt has been in the lineup and because Merritt's been out breaking out. Merritt's probably down this week, and that's a big loss because that's a guy that can come out of the backfield, he can catch the ball, give him the ball in open space, and he's taking off, he's picking guys miss. So big loss there. Defensive line, I mean, the trench is going to be something to watch, right? Because you've got Houston's offensive line, which has surprisingly been really good the last few weeks. Tom Cable, we got to give him a lot of credit for the job he's done because last year, that Roughnecks offensive line was a disaster. I mean, they were one of the worst in the league behind Memphis. This year, they've been trending upwards week in and week out. But, I know you kind of talked about it. Ronnie Perkins wins your player of the week. After this week, he was out week 5, comes back week 6, has 2 sacks, and he's a team captain on that team. So he's one of those guys. He's a character. He's one of those guys that gets the rest of the troops rallied and ready to go. So I like Birmingham in this one. I think they're the slight favorite. I think the Stallions probably get. I'd say this game's gonna be a bit ugly. Maybe like a 23-18 type of. You have some offense in the second and third quarter, but it's gonna be a slugfest throughout most of it. But I say Stallions 23, Roughnecks 18.
Well, I think I'm with you. I think the Stallions pull it out. I don't think it's necessarily by any stretch of the imagination a blowout or something like that. In fact, I think it's probably going to come down to the wire. But I think, Skip has done a good job over the years, obviously, of kind of getting this team to rise to the occasion. And I think, when you have a game like this where there's a lot at stake, I think Houston is going to come, or excuse me, sorry, Birmingham's going to come into it ready to play. And not that Houston isn't, but in some ways, I think these teams are, in terms of the talent wise on the field and kind of what they bring, I think they're pretty evenly matched, especially right now, the way that Houston's kind of surging. But I think the big difference between these teams is, I just trust Skip a lot more than I do CJ. And, I think Skip's going to have the Stallions a little bit more prepared. I think he's going to make better decisions in game. I think he's going to make better adjustments in game. And I think given what's at stake, I think the Stallions are going to come ready to play. And again, I think they're going to have to, fight and claw and, bite and do everything they can to kind of inch their way across the finish line and win against kind of a scrappy, good, like I said, surging Roughnecks team. But I think the Stallions, pull it out and like kind of similar to you and, by less than a touchdown for sure, by a field goal or two. But we shall see. The first time you said we were going to win against DC, you jinxed us. So I don't know. I don't know
The
that I can
James
take.
Larsen curse. But didn't I come back
Yeah.
on and give a prediction you guys won, or am I tripping?
Uh, yes, you came on. I think it was. I think it was before before we played Houston the first time. Actually, maybe because I
That
think
might
at
have been
that
it.
point, Corral was playing and still, and I'm pretty sure we won. So yeah, I guess you're 1-1 right now. So we'll see what happens here. Best 2 out of 3. Um, but I appreciate it, James. I'm gonna let you go. I've taken enough of your time, and I know you got things to do. Wanted to talk about a few other things, but we ended up, like I said, this ended up turning into the quarterback episode. But that's fine because I think that's what's on everybody's mind right now. So we shall see what happens this weekend with Case Cookess and or Jamar Smith or Jalen Wharton. Should be interesting. And then next week there'll be even more to talk about because potentially we'll have Alex Magoo back in action. And it'll be interesting to see if he takes the field or not in a huge game in St. Louis with, what's going to be, I'm sure, a rocking crowd. And I saw recently they've brought in Tim Brando to be on the call with Joel Klatt for that game. And so I think the league's going to kind of go out of their way to promote that one. So it'll be interesting to see if it's Alex Magoo who takes the field across from Max Duggan or Case Cookess or what Skip decides to do. But we'll save that for next time. So appreciate it, James. I was going to say, tell people where they can find you, but I'm not even going to bother doing that because I think everyone knows at this point. If they don't, they'll find out. But enjoyed it and look forward to chatting to you again soon. Enjoy
Absolutely.
another weekend of UFL action.
It's always a pleasure to talk, Luke. Talk Stallions football, and maybe next time we can talk about my Panthers a little bit, even though they're not my
We'll
Panthers.
see about that. We'll see about that. Giddy up.